Am I on?
Then in the last paragraph, 2.1, it's the donor shall provide all the labor and material supply necessary to complete the work. And so we're not obligated.
Okay. Oops. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. It is October 17th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Invite you to stand and join us in the invocation. Tonight will be led by Pastor Matt Waite from the First Reformed Church, and following that I will lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Wise and loving Father, thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to worship you in peace. Thank you for loving us even despite ourselves from your boundless and gracious nature. In the scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I am asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Oak Harbor. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Waite. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have an agenda before us. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing no changes, we will move forward then with the agenda as presented. Tonight we have no actual presentations, but we will go right to the citizen comment period. And I wanted to read the brief instructions, please. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. To ensure comments are recorded properly, please state your name clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all citizens have sufficient time to speak. Comments regarding candidates or ballot measures are not allowed under state law. Individuals participating in public comment are asked to refrain from speaking on these topics during the comment period. So our citizen comment period is now open. Looks like we have one who has signed up, Bob Brown.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I am Bob Brown of the North Whidbey Lions Club, the sponsor of the annual car show held at Windjammer Park. This last year, August, was our 32nd annual car show. We had 220 entrants, of which 105 were out-of-towners. 46 cities were represented other than Oak Harbor. There were 70 awards passed out to the various winners. One, a lucky car, won 4 awards. Best in its individual class, the choice of the walk-in guest, the choice of the owners of the other vehicles, and of course, the mayor's choice. The travel by the out-of-towners was approximately 8,000 miles combined one way, and needless to say, another 8,000 to get back home. As can be noted, Our advertisement was spread well across the west here. Many people commented to me about what a great setting it was to have the waterfront and the grass rather than pavement under their vehicles. Our thanks to the City of Oak Harbor for all your support, and we look forward to number 33 next August. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks to your club for all the hard work. That's a fun time for us. I want to back up a little bit. We have some council members that are absent this evening. Councilman Jim Campbell, Councilor Tara Heisen, and Councilor Joel Servadius. So I'm looking for, yes.
I move
Councilman.
we excuse Council Members Servadius, Heisen, and Campbell.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to excuse council members Servadius, Heisen, and Campbell. Motion by Munn, second by Wassinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any other citizen comments? Even if you didn't sign in, we'll invite you to comment if you'd like. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And I think Councilor Almberg.
Yes, Mayor, if you please, I would like to pull item 4F for further clarification and discussion by the staff.
Okay, so 4F is pulled, and if we don't have any other changes, we'll, the items number 4A through E will be approved as presented. Okay. We'll move on then to, let's go to 4F. Councilor Almberg?
Well, on earlier conversations with Dr. Merriman brought up some questions that maybe we could improve this contract amendment, and I think it would be appropriate to turn over the explanation to Dr. Merriman.
Okay. Dr. Merriman?
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. As Mr. Almberg referenced, we've had some further discussions a little bit since the time of posting this proposed agreement. There was a word or two in there that was a little bit concerning, so we'd like to propose a change before you actually look at this. Right at your stations there, you should see a draft of what the new agreement is. If you look towards the bottom of that first page, there's a section 2.2, and you see it underlined in legislative draft there. It says the city shall reimburse. Previously, it said the city shall contribute. We have to be a little bit careful. It's a word change, but what we want to do is reimburse for actual costs rather than donating. Donating could be not such a good word when we look at gifting of public funds. So we want to make sure that we're saying reimburse for a sum total of $7,000 for actual invoice costs of the project. So then the donor will be required to actually bring in those invoices to us so we can have those on hand before we reimburse. And up above, just the last sentence in 2.1, we're striking one word, the word sole, out of sole expense. So the donor will still be responsible for the rest of the funding for this. Where this originally came from is the Arts Commission would like the city to participate in this art project, and they felt that $7,000 was an appropriate number to look at. There's some costs that have gone up a little bit on the project, and they felt just as well it's a good community benefit, and so they'd like to propose the city jump in and help with that. And that's where this agreement, or this amendment to the agreement, came from. But even so, we would still like to incorporate that reimbursement provision into 2.2.
Okay. So any questions about that? Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
Can you just real quick, so I believe this actually all came about maybe right before I took my seat on council. Can you just give me just a brief back history of the original agreement and what it is, just for
Sure.
basic knowledge? Nothing too specific, just
No,
general.
that's fine. This is for an art piece called The Founders, and it references the three original founders of Oak Harbor. And I'm going to take a shot. It's Taft, Sumner, and Friend. And you'll see that in a lot of the land plats around here. But this will be more or less a monument. It'll be down on the end of City Beach Street. I believe it is, or is that Dock Street? That's City Beach Street. And down in that area, once we get the treatment plant put together and the thing, we have a good spot picked out to put that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other, yes, Councilor Almberg.
If there are no further questions or comments, I'd like to make a motion that we accept consent agenda item 4F as modified. That would be the First Amendment to the professional service agreement for the Founders Memorial between Richard Nash and Sue Carhollis in the city of Oak Harbor.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the First Amendment is it as amended, as modified to the professional services agreement for Founders Memorial between Richard Nash and Sue Carhollis and City of Oak Harbor. So I think we've got a motion by Almberg and a second by Wassinger. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. So we are moving then on to item number 5, Mayor's comments. I've got a couple of things. Just a reminder that October is National Community Planning Month, the whole darn month. So our hats off to the planners here at the city in celebration of National Community Planning Month. And also, Friends of the Library Week is this week, October 15 through the 21st. So congratulations to Friends of the Library. And also wanted to announce the No Tricks Safe Treats. There's a flyer that talks about that on Halloween, October 31st from 5 to 7 p.m. downtown Oak Harbor. Pioneer Way from Eli Street to Midway will be closed. There's a costume contest with prizes, a haunted bus, a photo booth, and lots of treats. So bring your family down and enjoy No Tricks Safe Treats right downtown Oak Harbor. Finally, wanted to talk just briefly about the NLC trip this year for the National League of Cities to Washington, D.C. It is scheduled for March 11th through the 15th. And wanted to talk briefly about that and see if we've got anybody in particular interested in attending. We're talking about the possibility of 2 council members this year to accompany me, but it could still be 3 depending on budget numbers and so forth. But so how does council have any feelings tonight about it? Yes, Councilor Allenberg.
I would make a suggestion that Councilmember Munns be one of the 2 who goes. I will not be one of them. I went this year. You know, Councilmember Munns has a special understanding and relationship with the Navy, which is in our best interest. So that's what my thoughts are.
Good, okay, good. Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
I agree. I would also recommend Councilmember Munns to go. I went last year, so I would feel appropriate that I not go this time if someone else would like to or better suited, but I definitely recommend Munns.
Okay. I think what we'll do then is we'll have a conversation with our other counselors that are not here tonight, and then we'll make a decision. But I would agree with that as far as Councilmember Munns goes. So, yes, Councilor
And another
Almberg.
thought too, Mayor, thank you. And we're going to have 2 new council members at that time, and it may be a good introduction for them to go to the NLC conference and to the Hill for their potential development.
Okay. Good point. We'll talk more about that then. I see we have one out in the audience. Mr. Larson is with us tonight. Welcome, Bill. Okay, we'll move along then to council members' comments at this time. Any councilor comments? Councilor Munns.
Thank you. AWC has already put their priority list together. They're refining the wording. I will get that to you, but that's something we need to do as a city to be sure that in December, I can present that to their board, but also we have it to give to our legislators before they go back in January. It kind of sneaks up on us on that kind of thing. And also wanted to congratulate one of our staff members, her husband, just had his change of command, Commander Eric Emery. And I was able to attend it, and it was great. He received a lot of honors that day, so very sharp.
Okay, anyone else? I too was able to attend that change of command, and it was a fun afternoon.
Excuse me.
Yes. Mayor.
I think Britt's waiting for update on
Yeah.
clean water
Okay.
facility.
Okay. I'm going to turn now to the city administrator and turn it to Dr. Merriman.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of items. The first is you'll find at your places tonight, there's a calendar of events. Rather than me going down and talking about our different meetings, it always turns out the last 3 months of the year, we have a significant number of meetings and different things going on. So we had this list prepared for you. So you can see some of the changes and the different things such as our investment committee meeting and when our workshops are, especially when we get into the holidays. So please keep this as a reference, and hopefully it'll help you on scheduling out this last 3 months of the year. The next item I have is also at your stations there, and I did send it out electronically today. There is a listing of the Affordable Housing Task Force recommendations and top priorities. And this was put together by the community group that was looking at our affordable housing priorities and things that we want to establish between Island County and the city of Oak Harbor. As you go down this list, you'll see a number of them are both entities. It may not mean we're doing them necessarily together, but they're things that the task force felt that we should both address. On the first page, you'll see an orange box around the first 8 or so items. And those are top priority items. They pulled those ones out significantly for us to look at addressing as soon as we can. So what we're doing with this list so far, the mayor's directed staff to go ahead and begin the work to analyze and implement these items. So we're tackling this orange box first. And over the next few council meetings, you'll start hearing us talking about these and bringing these things forward. They may not necessarily be in this exact order, because some of them are fairly simple to do. Others involve more of a public process with the planning commission and a couple meetings with city council to accomplish. And also we need to have some discussions because there are some policy issues embedded in some of these that we'll want to have more conversation on to make sure that we're tailoring it the way council sees fit. So what I wanted to do, at least get this to you. In a couple of meetings we've referenced this list before. As you can see, it's lengthy. There are 40 items on the list. So we'll be spending some time working on this and bringing these items back to you. So you're kind of aware of what work we're doing and then how we're starting to fit these things into our own affordable housing efforts here. So I just wanted to make sure you had this list. And then the last item, we have Brett on deck for the treatment plant update.
Oh, good evening. It's time for our Clean Water Facility Project update. I've had a lot of comments from friends that are a little more rude than this, saying that why are we building a black building? It does kind of stand out, but that's actually a sealer for the CMU. So the final building will have a brick facade on it. So if you see a black building, that's not what it looked like it had done. But I've actually received quite a few comments on that one at home. Anyway, recent activities, design work, we are anticipating our 90% Windjammer design documents. We'll have those in probably tomorrow, and we'll be reviewing them, get them ready to go. We hope to put them out for bid right after the first of the year. We're kind of hitting the Christmas season, so we're not going to be bidding work over Christmas. Our SCADA work does continue. That's ongoing, and it'll be going all the way to the end of the project. We did have the opportunity to meet with the Department of Ecology this morning. They did pay us a site visit. We did discuss our new permit, and we discussed the reuse, and they were excited to help us out. And a lot of the things that we talked about at the last meeting are coming to fruition. Construction-wise, we're just cranking away at it, still pouring concrete. We're, as of today, we're about 10,200 yards. Still ahead of schedule on our pours and below our labor estimates. We're hanging in there, especially when you get to the end of the project, things start to lag a little bit. We continue backfilling around structures. You're going to see a lot more of that pile starting to disappear out there, and as we start to pull things back in. Our GMP's number 9, which is mechanical and electrical, those are going full blast. A lot of pipe, a lot of electricity going in there. And number 11, which is most of our architectural stuff, is starting to pick up. This week we have 100 workers on site, but actually last week we peaked out at 110. It varies when we have crew size, but a lot of people there last week. The self-perform and the wood framing is starting. It'll be a lot more obvious next week. The roofers and the masons are still going to town, quite a bit happening there. Once the masons finish up the CMU, then we're going to come back and put that brick facade we have on there. So once they get finished with that, they're going to come back and start putting up the pretty stuff. So we're excited about that. Funding, I'm afraid there's nothing new on that front right now. We're still waiting for the capital budget. That really does impact our ability to chase Windjammer park opportunities, but hopefully that logjam will break up. For upcoming council updates and decision points, we will be talking about ERCI Amendment number 9 later in this meeting. We have scheduled a city council tour on November 6th at 1 o'clock. So I think an invite has been sent on that, and we will notice that. Schedule-wise, we're still hanging in there. Right now, we're watching it pretty closely. No signs of problems. Public outreach, if you have any questions, you can reach us at oakharborcleanwater.org. You can call us at 914-7000 or work extensions. Email us at treatmentplant@oakharbor.org. And our next open house is October 24th. Questions?
Any questions? Comments? Nope. Looks like it's pretty clear. Thanks. So we're going to now move into the public hearings, meetings, ordinances, resolutions. We do have a few to go through tonight. Looks like there are 4 items. To speak at a scheduled public hearing or meeting, please sign in, but if you don't, I'll still give you a chance to speak before we take any action. To ensure comments are properly recorded, please state your name clearly into the microphone and limit your comments to 3 minutes to ensure all have sufficient time to speak. So we'll start with item number 7A, which is Resolution 1719, Windjammer Park Windmill Removal. And we have our city engineer, Mr. Joe Stoll.
Mayor, council members, thank you for having me here tonight. Resolution is somewhat self-explanatory, but I'm going to get into it a little bit more here in just a second. So background is in May, we had a significant windstorm and had some debris fall off of the windmill blades. So our building official and park staff went out and did a closer inspection, and we ended up bringing out a contractor, structural engineer, Ashley and Vance Engineers, to look at it closer, and they advised putting fencing around it to protect from other falling debris. It was intended to be a temporary measure so that we could get through the 4th of July weekend. We're well past that and starting to get into more windy weather, so it's time to look at it again. And then I know that Alex and Kathy presented this at the workshop that we had last, so if, I know you have some basic understanding of where we're at. These are some photos taken during the inspection with the building official and parks department. You can see, we've done a good job. I saw some comments about maintenance. You can put a lot of paint on something, and if the wood's rotting underneath, it's not going to do a whole lot. You can see that the paint, it has been painted and kept up on the roofs, not terribly old as well. But it's been installed for quite some time, since the 70s. So you can see a little bit more of how the bolts, it just sheared clean away from the bolts. Look closely at the railing there, and you can see a screwdriver stuffed right through the railing. That says a little bit about the quality of what we got going. That's on one of the blades. There's another photo, I didn't include it, but it's on both sides of that, that fitting there. So these are a couple of photos. You can see the fence with they're getting set up for the carnival. And this is near the 4th of July, right beforehand. And that's Ashley and Vance up in our bucket truck taking a closer look. So we presented some options at the workshop. One is to remove the windmill and construct it someplace else. Another one is to remove just the paddles and leave the building until a future Windjammer park phase. Design and make the necessary structural changes that would, repairs that would need to be done to make it safe. Leave it as is, put fencing around it is always an option, the as-is option. So what we heard from council at the workshop is avoid additional fencing. That was a comment that came up. Salvage material for use in a new windmill. It was expressed that the windmill is iconic for Oak Harbor, and it's on just about everything we have that says Oak Harbor, any publication we have, so it's important to the community. And there was some discussion about alternate locations, and that conversation can go on further. So what that means is that options 3 and 4, as staff, we says, well, what we heard is that we're really not going to try and fix it, and leaving it as is isn't really an option either. So the first two options, we kind of melded them together. So the proposed resolution authorizes staff to remove the windmill at Windjammer Park. We can do that in phases. We can go out there and remove the blades for now and leave the structure. If we care to remove the whole thing, we can do that too. But the resolution allows us to do it in stages as we see fit. And it also authorizes staff to pursue another location for a windmill that models this one. Of course, it likely won't be the same one, but we have the plans that were brought over, so we can pilfer those and turn them into something new again. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Okay, before we do that, we'll see if anybody from the public would like to weigh in. Okay, it doesn't look like it, so we'll bring Mr. Stoll back and turn it over to the council. Yes, Councilor Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. I was down at the marina today, and there was some really good gust. I'm guessing maybe even close to 50. And so I imagine there's going to be some more damage. Could you keep us up to date if something happens in the next few days, since we're under the wind warning? If staff, there's a call down because something else broke or something else flew off or something like, just so that we have that knowledge?
Certainly, actually, Alex went down there shortly after the windstorm to see if there was any damage, and he didn't see any.
Oh, that's good. And I think it's wonderful that we have the original plan so that we can build another one soundly again. So that's great. Thank you.
Councilor Almberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Stowell, the location of the windmill, let me just start this conversation over. We have a grading plan out there where we're going to be increasing the elevation approximately 7 feet at the finished floor level, and then it tapers out from that point into the park. Is there an elevation that is critical to us in the vicinity of the windmill with respect to any other improvements? That's grading, backfill, and structures that go in there.
Up until May, our intent was to work around the windmill until a future phase where we would relocate it. So it's already in the plans right now to grade around it for phase 1 that we're working on at this moment.
Okay, why wouldn't it be more efficient if we're going to remove the building, wouldn't it be more efficient to do it now so that we don't interfere with the grading and then have another shot at doing the grading in that area? Why not clean it all up at one time if you're going to clean it up?
I'm more than happy to do that. It was an option to leave just the structure and take the blades down. If we are ready to take the whole thing down, we can do that.
What is the structure being used for now?
Some bit of storage, but not much else.
Does it have utility value, leaving the structure there and taking the components down that may cause some damage or injury?
It's 2 stories inside. It could be used for storage of some sort. That's what we've used it for in the past. For a stretch, I think ERCI was using it as a lab for their work in the park. So,
But their work is coming to an end too.
well, yeah, and they've moved into the Windjammer, the Woodby Island Bank building
Yeah.
too.
How about the structure inside the building? Is there anything inside the building that's not exposed to the weather that's really salvageable? If we have to take it apart, is it going to be worth the cost of dismembering it and salvaging that? Or is it better just to take it down, in your opinion?
I think it's better just take it down.
That's kind of my gut feeling about that too. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Councilor Wassinger.
The 90% design plans that I just saw that we're getting closer to as we speak, is this area a part of that 90% design that's being worked on right now that the windmill is in?
It's referenced in the design, but we're working around the windmill. The expectation was that it was going to stay until later.
So I think if it's going to come down, which I think it should, just for the safety aspects of what's going on. And if it makes more sense, if it's more efficient to do that now and before we're done with this design and we're done with the whole thing, and then maybe having to go back and redo it or change something, would it be more efficient to just take it down now and try and get that in this first go round at design of that area that we're already in the process with the architects and engineers?
It would give us some little bit more flexibility. My personal opinion, which I should probably leave out of this, but I'm going to present it anyway, is immediately start planning for another location and start the public process for that so that we have that path moving forward so we can start rebuilding it someplace else.
Well, it's not, and I agree, it's important to start that process, but I think it's also important not to lose steam on what we're already in the process of, and I'd hate to have to bring back architects and engineers for a space that we knew was going to go away soon anyways. And as heartbreaking as that is, and I love the windmill, and I think we all agree that it's important to the city, and it's a great monument representation of our heritage and our history. But I think and I do think we do need to have the public process and have a long discussion, more thought out discussion on a location. But I'm right now concerned with we're right at the end, right in the middle of designing that whole span in phase 1. I don't want to lose momentum or have to backtrack and come back with amendments or if that would happen.
Honestly, it could go either way. The plans are drafted to work around it. We certainly could take advantage of the space if it was taken down. The first step is to get the blades down that are the most hazardous and work towards taking the rest of it down. And maybe we can do that while we're working on the park.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support removing the windmill and in its entirety and relocate it to another place and salvage any materials that could be used for new construction to a new location. And I understand there will be a public process and public participation in looking for a new location. Now, there was discussion before about moving the windmill to that location at the corner of Bayshore and Bixma Road. would that still be a plan? Because in that location, it'll be quite visible to the public, to the entrance to the park.
You know, I've been thinking about this a little while, and I have a half dozen ideas of my own. There's all kinds of really interesting places that we could put the windmill that would be attractive. I mean, one far-fetched one is if they ever build the roundabout at the intersection of 20 there, or over in Flintstone Park, where you can see it from the water as a beacon for people coming in. Someplace more visible than where it is now, where we can really show it off.
That'll be good. Thank you. It's all.
Okay, anyone else? Yes,
One more
Councilor
question.
Wassinger.
So the way that this resolution reads is that, and you may have already answered this, but just give me a brief. So the way it reads is that it directs staff can start removing it immediately?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Olmberg.
So the motion would be to remove it in its entirety. In other words, demolish it and move on so that we have the space to work and we continue with an open area until we find out where we're going to go with a new windmill. I think we should have a new windmill, but I'm not sure that there's much to salvage in this one.
Yeah, I think,
You know, the resolution leaves us enough flexibility to do either. If we'll work with the mayor, and if we need to take it all down now, that's what we'll do, and if we want to take it down in phases, that's what we'll do. But this resolution gives us option to do either.
yes, Councilor Wassinger.
How long do you think it will take to remove it? Do you think that you'll get part of it down and then, you know, we'll have another workshop scheduled? Actually, we have another workshop scheduled. Is it next week? I mean, how fast do you think this process will take?
You're asking an engineer to take something apart?
It'd be like tomorrow by noon? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yeah, be careful what you ask for. No, in all seriousness, we'd be out there pretty swiftly, at least for the blades.
Okay.
The rest of it would take a little bit more planning.
Okay. I was just getting to if you could give us updates, maybe. You know, if you do come across something that is interesting or that you may need, you know, like, oh, maybe this is salvageable or, you know, something that we can keep when we relocate it, you know, I'd just like to be updated of what you find as you start taking it down. So I was curious if we would have enough time that you could come back to us maybe next week or next council meeting and give an update.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
As the windmill turns.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Muntz.
Thank you. I don't know if in the bricks that were laid, if there's a particular brick that hasn't really been discovered that maybe has the initials or names of the people that put it together. It might be inside the structure. I don't know. I know that Shorty Dejan was one of the bricklayers for it. But if you find something like that, that would be great to keep and then to put in to the new one.
Certainly. We'll look for that.
Hidden gems like in on Pioneer Way when they found the rings to tie up the horses and plaques on some of the trees that were given as memorial for some people through the years in town. So that would be great.
Yes, Councilor Muntz.
I would like to move that we adopt resolution number 17-19.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt Resolution 1719, Windjammer Park Windmill Removal. Motion by Munn, second by Olmberg. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Stoll. Our next item is under contracts and agreements. Item number 8A, Professional Services Agreement, Carollo Engineering, Inc., Water Transmission Projects. We still have our city engineer.
Yes,
Podium.
Mayor, council members. And I have my muscle coming out from the back room there. I have Arnie Peterschmidt and Eric Worlagowski. I got that right, did I? Wologorski. See, I tried, and I was like even practiced. Anyway, so if we have questions at the end, they can help us out with that. So the background on this, briefly is our water supply comes from the city of Anacortes, not literally the city of Anacortes. We buy it from them. It comes from the Skagit River at the treatment plant over near Mount Vernon. It's transported to Oak Harbor through 2 different transmission mains. The 10-inch main was originally installed by the Navy and upgraded over time. Our responsibilities from about the north side of Deception Pass into town. The 24-inch main is our responsibility from Sharp's Corner all the way in. And this is a map showing kind of the route it goes. Largely, it follows the highway up to a certain point, and then it cuts across the Navy base. And the end of this study is at the booster station at Altfield. All in all, it's about 12 miles worth of main. And our focus of the study is on the 24-inch, although we have to consider the 10 when we do the study. So the main was originally built in 1972. It's made out of ductile iron on the outside, mortar lined, so it's concrete on the inside of it. Design life on a ductile iron pipe is typically in the 100-year range, give or take, in ideal conditions. In poor environments, it can deteriorate quickly. And some homework that I did, I know it's kind of a weird number, but between 21 and 40 years, if it was an extremely corrosive soil and wasn't protected well, you could have issues. So we've had the 24-inch main in the ground for 45 years. It's a good time to take a look. We've seen bits and pieces of it over time as projects have occurred, so we have some confidence that it's doing well, but it's always good to go take a closer look and make sure everything's all right. This isn't brand new thought. This was part of our 2014 water system plan. The 2 projects listed I pulled out of the plan, but those are the 2 to do a condition assessment and surge analysis. And then the last piece of it is an intertie. And so what we really have are 3 projects that are intermingled. We have an assessment and survey, and then we have a surge analysis followed up with a somewhat tag-along project and intertie. And I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. So the assessment and survey, what we're going to do is we're going to go out and take a look at the pipe, actually the areas surrounding the pipe. First thing we've got to do is find it, because it's been installed for 45 years. Roadways have changed. Record drawings were referencing points that don't exist anymore. So we need to be adjacent to where the pipe is to do the testing in order to get accurate results. So part of this is going to be a survey of the alignment of the pipe. And in places where it's difficult to find, we're going to use all kinds of different tools, everything from potholing to ground penetrating radar. So we have a wide variety of tools we can use to find it. Then we're going to go do some soil samples. What's the pH? What's the conductivity? And is it high groundwater or not? Or is it brackish water even? And then in key locations, we'll actually dig down and examine the pipe itself. And I threw a little graphic up on there. I've gone to a couple classes on cathodic protection, and it's easy to spot, but it is an issue. So what happens is the soil actually conducts electricity to an extent, and it transports ions from one place to another. And so what happens is it pulls material off of one place and deposits it someplace else. So it creates a thin wall over here and deposits material over here. And so that's when that's corrosion on a pipe. And you've probably seen it on plumbing around your house even. And that's what we're trying to seek out and stop. And during this assessment, they'll help us find different ways to address any corrosion that might be occurring. There's a handful of different things that you can do. Everything from inducing current into the pipe to throwing a sacrificial anode in and tying it to the pipe as well. But that's all part of this assessment, is to help us determine what's the best method to use to extend the life of the main. So the surge analysis tacks on to the other side of this. This is a profile of the alignment just pulled off of Google Earth, something real simple. The 2 dips in the middle are where Deception Pass Bridge is at, and Canoe Pass Bridge. The water line doesn't go down to the bottom. It hangs off the bridge. But you can see there's a lot of variety in terrain, And surge is kind of interesting. It's like water hammer. You've heard the story of the college kids all shutting the water off at the same time and burst in a pipe, that kind of a story. Well, water has an energy behind it when it's flowing, and if you stop it too fast, it can have an incredible impact on the pipe and exceed its design capacity. Interestingly enough, it can also have the opposite effect. It can create a suction, and it can collapse a pipe too. So you're going to be looking at both of those situations, and we're going to highlight those areas, what we believe the true strength is of the main. There's the design strength of the main. After that analysis that we do, the condition assessment, we might have some spots that we want to pay particular attention to. If they're starting to corrode a little bit, we'll want to make sure that that part of the pipe isn't stressed any more than necessary. Once they've run the computer model on this, they'll determine whether or not some sort of surge protection is necessary. And there's a host of different ways to do surge protection. We'll likely end up with something that looks like a huge propane tank that's half filled with water, half filled with pressurized air. And so when that surge comes through, it pressurizes the air in the tank, and then it relieves that energy in that fashion. And we might get some other suggestions, but that's the low-hanging fruit solution that usually is used. We don't currently have any surge protection on the 24-inch main. It hasn't been necessarily an issue at this point, but it certainly could be. So we're going to look at it, address it, and see if we need to do anything more. So the intertie, the tag along to this project it's something we've thought about for a bit. Rich Tiehouse has talked about this for a while, a need for an intertie closer to Deception Pass Bridge. And it was highlighted when we were doing the work on the 10-inch main. We had to shut that main down to do the bridge hangers. And the next closest valve on the south side of the bridge is all the way down at the traffic signal. So that's why there were Sandy huts out there at the Deception Pass State Park for a bit. It's because we weren't able to provide good water service through the 10-inch line backwards up to that facility. We're going to be looking at, this is our daydream that we've been working with, is that we could just go right underneath this bridge with the water line, the 10's on one side, the 24's on the other. It's tight quarters, but it's the straightforward answer. But we're going to look up and down a little bit further to make sure that it's the best solution for us. And the contract that we have we're looking at tonight with Carollo, we'll be looking at closer at this option and then exploring others to make sure that in fact this is the best solution for us, especially after we have the survey completed for the 24. So consultant selection, the fun part of all engineering projects. We're required to do it qualifications based. I always bring this up. It starts at the federal level through the Brooks Act. They require it for federal projects. It's been further adopted by the RCW 3980, and then we have it in our code that we have to select an engineer based on qualifications. Once we've selected them based on qualifications, we negotiate a scope of services with them, and that develops the price. The thought being is that if you have a qualified professional and perhaps their price might be a little bit different than somebody else's, you're going to be getting a better product, so everything balances out, if not better in the end, because you're basing it on the quality of the work. So we blasted out requests for qualifications to well over 100 different engineering firms. We use the MRSC roster to do that. They have an email list, and we mailed it out to a bunch of people. We got 3 responses back. And they were from 3 firms that we're all familiar with. All 3 are currently doing work for the city. So we brought them in for an interview. And all these firms were really good. Carollo's presentation was just a bit better than the others. They had their game plan together. And so as a group, that's who we decided to move forward with. So the tasks are broken out, very similar to what you see, the way the presentation followed. There is a management reserve nested in there for unknowns in case we want to do extra potholes or testing that presents itself. We have a little bit of capability of doing that. This slide is a condensation of the table that's in your packet. So with that, there's a recommended motion or action up there at the top. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them. Or I'll be glad to have Eric take them.
Okay, before we bring it to the council, I'll ask if there are anybody from the public that would like to speak to this. Okay, seeing none. Come on back. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stoll, on page 294, that's Exhibit A, Scope of Services. And you also mentioned about this, that the city is unsure of the exact location of the existing transmission line along 12-mile route. Now, do you have any blueprint when the project was constructed 45 years ago? Usually there's a blueprint of a project.
We do. Some places we know exactly where it's at. There's a couple bridges that it's near that it's hanging off the bridge. We can see it right there. There's other places where they've done some work on the highway and we've had to move it. Though that's pretty easy too. But some of the other areas, the reference points that were used in our experience trying to go back out and locate it again later aren't as accurate as we'd like, because that's a danger. If somebody goes out and goes to excavate near there, we need to be able to tell them where it's at. And it's also necessary to perform the analysis.
Yeah. So this task could be included, and Carollo will be looking for the transmission line. In the process of locating for the transmission line, do you know if Carollo will use a very powerful magnet to track down?
There's a handful of ways, and there's a whole team behind Carollo. They're not the only ones. They have sub-consultants with them. We have a surveyor. We have somebody that specializes in doing analysis, a surge analysis. We have a locating company that's working with us, and they have a whole host of different tools to help find the pipe. We'll track it down.
I'm sure there'll be tools, but it's kind of hard to track down what's underneath the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
Has this main been inspected before in its lifetime since the 70s?
There has been opportunity when we've had to relocate the pipe and cut into it, and at that time it looked okay at the location we were inspecting it. We haven't inspected or the full length of it though, or to the detail that we're looking at doing now.
Okay. And a follow-up.
Go ahead.
So we're about halfway into maybe the expected life, you would think, of this infrastructure?
Well, according to the textbook, yes.
Okay. And I imagine we're in the process of building a $100 million wastewater treatment plant, that this would be a project that would rival that when the day comes to redo it, or do you anticipate it would be redone in phases or pieces, or what is the typical process that happens when these come to the end of their time?
That's kind of interesting because we've experienced that a little bit with the 10-inch main that was installed, I'm guessing back in the 40s. I can't remember for sure, but one, it was a smaller line, but Anacortes has increased the size of that to a 16 from Sharp's Corner up to about past Lake, I believe. So it's, I'd imagine it'd happen in phases. I think it's too much to take on all at once. And we'd probably end up replacing the 10-inch while we left the 24 in a service. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping that's far enough out that we don't have to worry about it at this point. It's something to plan for, but hopefully far enough out we can really plan for it.
Where I was gonna go is do you feel that we have an adequate plan? I know it seems like a long way out, but I sure hope I'm alive in 50 years, 45 years, 55 years. Do you feel that the city, that we're doing our job in sort of directing and having that in our plans to do that?
Most definitely. That's why we're here tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Stowell, usually when we do anything with the water, we split the cost with the Navy. Is this one of those projects that will qualify or not? Since
I
it's
don't
a-
believe it does with the 24. It
Only
does.
when we move it?
I'm getting the nay from Doug, so no, it does not. This is on.
So only when the pipe has to be moved to the roadway, we split it.
It's the 10-inch line that we usually deal with on the Navy, not the 24-inch line.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Olmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. We provide water to the Park Service, is that correct?
Yes.
Will they participate in the intertie so that we can provide service to the restrooms? Or it sounds like when I read the description of this work, that's one of the reasons why we're doing that.
Well, it is one of them. However, we're going to need to do maintenance on the pipelines on the bridge from time to time, and it's nice to have a way of
Allows you to
isolating
cross
that.
over so you can shut one
And
section
we have multiple
down.
interties down
Yeah.
down the length of the line, and it is very helpful for maintenance.
Okay. And then when customers outside the city limits buy water from us, they pay 1.5 times the rate, correct?
As long as they're within the UGA.
Yes.
Outside that, we can't provide service.
Well, we're providing service to the state park, aren't we?
State agencies, and there are a couple wholesale customers that we have that we're able to provide service to.
Are we
But we
prov-
can't provide service to
My
individual
question
users
is,
unless it's an emergency.
Are we charging the state 1.5 times what the rates are of our?
I'm going to ask for some help on that answer.
Mr. Olmberg brought this up right before the council meeting. I don't know if we have that available right now, but we're going to get that information.
I didn't
for you.
mean this as an ambush. I was just
Yeah.
really curious. I thought we'd have the answer. And I'm hoping that we treat the people outside the city and the UGA with the same consideration that we treat people outside the city, but within the UGA, paying 1.5 times the rate. When can we find that out?
We'll know that tomorrow.
Okay. And then there's another thing, I'm a little bit embarrassed on this agreement. Usually our agreements have schedule of values, and this is just kind of a summary schedule of values that you have up here. And usually they are T&M not to exceed. And I don't find that provided in this packet. Can you help me out? Maybe I'm overlooking it.
You're not overlooking it, and I thought of that question before coming in here and made photocopies. Am I getting to be a mind reader or what?
Well, I don't know, you might be. We've worked together for a
So-
long time.
So would you mind if I handed these out? Is it a,
Well, and I also don't find in the agreement where, and it's probably here, but is this a T&M not to exceed? And help me out, find where it identifies T&M not to exceed as opposed to a lump sum contract.
well, part of that will come actually from your motion as your recommended action, but we can find it in the contract as well. I'm sure we have it in, and it's probably nested a few pages in.
I can answer that if you'd like. If you look on page 289, the consultant shall be paid by the city on a time and materials basis.
Thank you very much. 289?
Yes, sir.
1A. 1A.
All right, okay. You know, when it's right in front of me, it's hard to find. Thanks a lot, Nikki. That's all I have. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions? How would the council like to proceed? Councilor Wassinger?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with Carollo Engineers for 2017 water transmission main project in time and materials not to exceed amount of $423,509.
Second.
Okay, so you've heard the motion. It is the same as the recommended action on the, posted up there. Motion by Wassinger, second by Munns. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Stoll. We're on to item number 8B. 8B is Professional Services Agreement, ERCI, for the wastewater treatment plant, amendment number 9.
Good evening. We're here to talk about Equinox Research and Consulting International Contract Amendment number 9. ERCI is our consultant of record for the archaeology at the Clean Water Facility. And several meetings back, Councilmember Munns asked us to bring in some samples, and we did coordinate with our tribal members and DAP to actually bring them in tonight. Kelly's got some here. These are actually quite interesting. They're all Native American tools that have been found on our site. And these are all, extremely old.
They'd be up to 2,000 years old.
And so the big exit here I actually saw when they pulled it out of the ground and was standing, and to me it brought a lot home in terms of what we're actually dealing with. Some of these tools, it's interesting that they came from a long ways away. The actual rocks were imported from.
As far away as Montana.
So these are real cultural artifacts, and it kind of gives you a feel for what we're dealing with down at the site on a day-to-day basis. We sometimes are confidential about what we're talking about, and these things are valuable, and we don't want people going down to start trying to dig these things up. So that's why one reason we do try to be careful about what we say. But we did talk to our MOA partners, and they told us, we do need to show what was actually happening here because it's important. And when we get done, we're going to have a really good story to tell. Anyway, we can talk about, this is amendment number 9. I'll talk a little bit about our background. The city's been working with the ERCI since 2013, May of that, doing the cultural resources for our project. In April 21st of 2015, the City Council approved a memorandum of agreement to satisfy what we call Section 106 of the project, which is the cultural resources part of that. This MOA is required as part of our funding requirements. It's a very important part of it, and at the administrative level, it is quite important. Excuse my eyes. But anyway, the MOA discusses, we call it archaeological work plan, discusses how we proceed on site if we find something. It gives us a lot of legal protection. It gives us how we communicate, how we report, and approvals required for the project. This is operating under a permit issued by DAP, which is Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. Both the city and ERCI are considered permittees on this permit. And it's been, in the last 2 years, we unfortunately have found lots of stuff. This is some of what we're finding. We've also found human remains. And I need to say that compared to our previous history on Pioneer Road, what we're finding down there has been a lot more extensive, a lot more complex. So we all had a bad experience on Pioneer, and the situation we have down at the Clean Water Facility has actually matched that right now. Excuse me. Background. We've had questions about why contract archaeologist services. ERCI is, again, our designated project on that for our MOA. Part of our job down there is keeping construction moving, so it's not something one person can do. We actually run any place of 1 to 5 archaeologists on site, depending on our work schedule. This has been very critical to us because if I have a crew down, that can be $15,000 a day. So us being able to avoid schedule delays and having the staffing to meet our construction needs is very important. And ERCI has been great at providing that. There's also other things we have to have on this. For example, if we do find a bone, we have to have it sent to a physical anthropologist to check it and determine whether it's human or not. And we found a lot of bones, and unfortunately some of them are human. So that's part of the specialization we have to do. Like I said, both ERCI in the city are responsible for this permit. And I think a big part of the ERCI job is if we have the need to have 3 people down the next morning, we schedule that the day before. So our ability to staff and match our construction needs is a big issue to us. And our staff city archaeologist is involved with the project. He spends about 20% of his time, and he's doing a great bit of help for us. He helps us with man load, and there's been a couple of times when we've had all hands on deck, and he's been able to jump in and help. Plus, he helps us a lot with administration and communications issues with DOE and DAP. Archaeology status, this actually we're on number 9. Number 8 is last summer I did report that we were finding human remains. We actually found 28 separate human remains during the project. We were able to deal with those and continue to work without disruption. So basically when we find remains, we have to stop. Well, our stoppages were about 15 minutes. A lot of that has to do with DAP and the tribes allowing us to use a streamlined process. They recognize we had a good feeling for the archaeology and for the situation, so we were able to keep moving forward, and they actually allowed us to not stop it after about the first 2. Also, I think the archaeology work is highly complicated because the fact of the matter is we were finding it 10, 12 feet in the ground. So it was down in a dangerous area, so it wasn't where you can sit down and actually look at stuff. We were having to pull out of the ground and rescreen it. And part of the streamlining process is they allowed us to mechanically screen those materials, which was huge savings for us. Like I said, we did successfully manage the work and the construction schedule, and can you read more?
The protection area was
Yeah,
extended.
and also another thing we did is, we had a boundary for our archaeological protection area, and we were able to expand that. So now the whole park has that same level of protection. So as we move forward with our phase 1 design, we have that same, we can use that same work plan, which is a great advantage to us both administratively, and we don't have to renegotiate that. With the ERCI, we have been using incremental contracts. This is amendment number 9. We've tried to be very cost efficient and try to keep our scope of work to what we know, because as you know, we have been working through things, and we try to keep it in segments so we can manage it. So we've kind of done through site exploration, permitting, the MOA, and into construction. We've been able to provide you with timely updates on what we're happening, and this is not a black box. We've also been able to adjust our tasks as we move along. So as I say, we have contingency money in there, but we've been able to, if we get into a situation where we have to deal with something, we've been able to deal with that. And right now, our archaeology budget is at less than 1% of the construction costs, and that's not a small amount by any means, shape, or form. But I would like to compare it again to Pioneer Way. We're showing $1.4 million on this right now, and that's about 40% of the field archaeology that we spent on Pioneer Way. So our team has been very efficient, and I think while it's certainly been a struggle, I think we've worked very hard to do the best for the city. Anyway, amendment number 9 is continuing of the monitoring effort, where it is starting to slow down, where the digging parts of it are starting to go away. We're starting to do the filling, thank God. We also continue to do coordination with the tribes and the agencies. That never slows down. That's going to go on for a while. We are providing archaeological services for the Windjammer Park, so about half the proposed cost is actually for phase 1 of the park. So this is new work, and we do have some money in there for curation of these type of articles when we get done. I hope eventually to have some of them on display so we can show the story. I think these are great things to see for the people in the town. Anyway, amendment number 9 is $251,456.25. Brings our total to $1,421,182.30. And that does include work we did previously. We did site evaluations, so the value we're seeing is just not field archaeology, it's the site evaluation that we did to even get there and get the MOA in place. Anyway, our recommended action is for the mayor to sign number 9 with ERCI in the amounts that I just quoted. Questions?
Okay, before we do this at council, I'll see if anybody from the public would like to have a question. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council. And yes, Councilor Olmberg.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments are really for Miss Kelly Bush. Hello, Kelly. Through the course of this project and other ones, you know, we've had a chance to visit on the site, and sometimes I probably asked questions and didn't seem to express thoughts that were describing perhaps the sensitivity that's necessary to collect this data and the artifacts and stuff like that. And you did explain to me the one thing that stuck with me. You said this tells our story. This is about our story, not just Native Americans, but about our story too, and for future generations. And I remembered that, but it didn't really have a lot of meaning to me until about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when I had an opportunity to visit the museums and cemeteries in Normandy, Bastogne, the areas of the Battle of the Bulge, Verdun, all of these areas that have seen civilizations move through these areas, but in recent history, these communities and these countries have preserved our heritage in museums, in photo documentation, and most importantly, in the cemeteries. And it's just a different feeling to stand in one of those cemeteries with 5,000 and 6,000 white crosses out there. And I don't know these people, but they are from our soil. They're our people. And I believe that the Native Americans feel that same way about their people scattered about in not an organized way in a cemetery with white crosses and nice mowed lawns, but they probably feel the same way about that. And I'm saying this not for any benefit to me, talking about taking that adventure, but to kind of share the importance of how other people have treated us in how we inter people who did the fighting for us in Europe, at least at this time. And I know that there are places like this even through the South Pacific too. So I've had kind of a change of heart about sensitivity. Thank you, Kelly.
Well said, Mr. Olmberg. Anybody? Yes, Councilor Wassinger.
I had a couple questions, and then you answered them on the last slide. So overall, do you think we're getting close to really digging down? And I would think just looking at the project that we're building up now, and that we kind of get to the end of.
I'll tell you that the project team's take on that is whenever we say we're close, we find something. So please don't jinx us.
Okay. Okay. Well, but you have to know if you're going to get out that big backhoe and dig 10 feet, like you say, into the ground.
We are budgeting,
I would imagine.
if you look at that money, to finish off where we are, we're budgeting $74,000. So that's the best sign we can have. But like I say, it's been Joe. Whenever we start saying that, Joe throws up
Yeah.
his hands and screams at us, yeah.
You don't know what you're going to have to do next. But and then my second question was going to be about the Windjammer Park.
Yes.
And are we going to anticipate needing these services as we complete phase 1 of the park? Is there going to involve digging and getting into the ground
That's
and
why
being sensitive?
this contract includes that effort.
Okay.
Our goal in Windjammer is to actually fill and try to cover up those layers as best we can, but there will probably be some minor digging going on, so we will be working that, and this contract amendment is intended for that.
Okay. And one last, so does this affect the overall budget of the wastewater treatment plan? Is this something that's going to cause it to go over budget
No.
in total?
No,
or-
like I say, it is in the scoop of things. We're carrying some money for archaeology. We're starting to push on the top limit of it, but is it going to affect the rates? Not significantly.
Thank you.
Remember, a lot of this cost is for Windjammer.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a great comment by Mr. Umberg concerning that he has seen those artifacts from the World War. My question is, those artifacts and other things that you have shown us, will they be preserved in a sort of a museum type that future generations can see those artifacts too?
So we don't have a curation plan in place yet for them. And the pre-contact, these older type artifacts that we collected from Pioneer Way are going to be reburied. And so I am not certain what's going to happen with these artifacts yet. However, we will have extensive documentation of them. And yeah, I can't say for certain if they're going to be.
But there'll be records of
Oh.
where they will be retained or preserved.
We are certainly going to try to get some artifacts for public consumption. We may have to put them someplace like in a case or someplace secure, but that's we had that discussion. We'd like to, and we had discussions with our MOA partners earlier in the summertime, and we said, the community has put a lot of money into archaeology, and we feel that we need to provide some benefit to them. I think seeing those artifacts, to me, is real important. So we're certainly going to try to get some so we can get them. If not, we'll have some recordings of them. But, to me, it was, you see something that's 2,000 years old, we really need to pass the word. But, can we do it legally? That's part of the discussions that we'll be doing. That's why we have some money in the budget for curation.
Right. It would be great if they can be preserved, like the one that you have showed us. That's like a sharp object stone, look like used in a spear during the old times.
Yeah, one of them is a spear point, one of them is a wedge tool used in woodworking like canoe making, and then two of them are fragments, probably one from a knife and one from a small arrow head
Right.
versus a big spearhead.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yes, Councilor Olmberg.
Ms. Bush, did you carbon date any of these? Do you have any idea what the timeline is for those?
Yeah, so we can't radiocarbon date these kinds of objects, but we've been radiocarbon dating the sediments around them, and whenever we get organics that you can radiocarbon date, and we have dates that start at 400 years back to 1800 years.
In the facility down here?
Yeah,
Okay, oh,
so that's our range right now.
thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I do have one more question. I'm sorry about this.
Okay.
How come we don't have any that are in the 203 year? You said 400 to 1800.
That's a longer conversation. and
There's a
it's
gap
great
in
one.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a great conversation, and it's one that we talk about a lot in our reports, is which sites got used right up into the contact period and which sites didn't. And there's a lot of reasons why people have moved around in the last 400 years, not the least of which is population decline due to smallpox and other things. So yeah, the discussion about why some sites got used right up into the modern time, like Pioneer Way did, and why this one didn't, is
Okay,
a more interesting
maybe we'll
question.
have that conversation
Yes.
some other time. Thanks.
Maybe it was underwater.
Yeah. That part of it might have been underwater.
That's what I said. It's underwater, maybe.
We have some really interesting sediments down here, and geomorphologically, we've got some good evidence for a couple really large winter storm events that move deposits around. At first, I thought they were tsunamis. That's how big they were.
So, Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to make a motion.
Okay?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign amendment number 9 to the professional services agreement with Equinox Research Consulting International for archaeological services related to the new wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $251,456.25, less the math error of $999.05, increasing the corrected total contract amount from $1,170,725.10 to $1,421,182.30.
Second.
Okay, so you heard the motion, and he read it verbatim from the recommended action. Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Pagao and seconded by Councilor Munns. Seeing no other questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Arvidsson.
And after the meeting, if somebody wants to talk more about some of the artifacts, we'll be available.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move to Section 9. This is our last item for this evening. This is a request for proposal, authorization, critical areas, wetland categorization buffer. And I see we have our Director of Development Services, Mr. Steve Powers.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Real quickly, this was a follow-on action from your September 19th council meeting, at which time you gave us the direction to prepare an RFP for the purposes of studying wetland buffers here in Oak Harbor. So we prepared that draft RFP. In summary, what it will do is to categorize somewhere between 6 to 8 of the city's wetlands. We'll be utilizing the most current Department of Ecology rating system standards. That's the 2014 standards. We'll be looking for buffer width recommendations for this representative sample of wetlands, which will then, of course, be based on best available science. Our goal is to see whether or not we can have buffers which are less than those recommended by ecology. Staff will just note for you quickly that there are no wetland delineations actually part of this effort. This is not that kind of work. And so your recommendation this evening, or staff's recommendation for you, is that you approve the scope of work and authorize staff to issue the RFP. I'd be happy to help you with your questions.
Okay, I'll give the audience a chance to come forward. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. So, yes, Councilor Allenberg.
Thank you. In the scope of services, it says no wetland delineation. Can you explain what the logic of that when we're doing this analysis?
Well, typically, where you're not going to do delineations for multiple wetlands solely to study what you would think the appropriate buffers would be. So what we're going to be asking the consultants to do is to review available information, first of all. What information is available already on the shelf, if you want to think of it in that way. And then also do some field verification. But you would not go through the cost and the time commitment to actually perform delineations and determine exactly where the boundaries of an individual wetland would be for this type of study.
So they will rely on our wetland maps right now and then go investigate those sites?
That would be one source of information. So they would use our critical areas maps, they would use the National Wetland Inventory maps, they would use the maps which Department of Ecology has, and if any of the other state agencies have them. They'd probably also look at the work that Island County did, because that would give us some good indication for those wetlands which are maybe in our UGA. And so you'd look at those available sources of information and then spot check in the field to see what are the on-the-ground conditions look like relative to those maps. And then with that information, help us understand whether or not a smaller buffer will meet our obligations to protect the functions and values of the wetlands.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. That's all I have.
Yes, Councilor Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Powers, so in a sense, we are gathering our own scientific evidence in order to make our case if we decide that we think something is not quite in alignment or whatever. Part of ecology is if you provide your own best science in kind of a rebuttal or that shows agreement in parts of but not others. So in a sense,
In a
That's
sense,
part of
yes.
it?
We're not going to do original science.
Right.
But what we're going to do is, I think of the best phrase to use is we're going to ground truth the
Okay.
information that's available to us.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? So I assume you're looking for a motion to approve the scope of work?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Munns.
I'll be happy to do that. I move we approve the scope of work and authorize the staff to issue the request for proposal.
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve the scope of work and authorize the staff to issue the request for proposal. Motion by Munns, second by Wassinger. Any other, okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you,
Mayor
Mr.
and Council.
Powers. And I think we've completed our agenda for this evening.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sound unanimous to me. Thank you.